Beloved, 2026 is tightening the screws. If you have eyes to see, you know it. The reports grow longer, the targets sharper, the notifications more insistent, and the rewards more elusive. We have dashboards for our dashboards, and still our hearts are not at rest. And so I say to you, not as a critic, but as a companion in this way, this year is not asking you to push harder under the law. It is calling you to yield deeper to grace in one living presence. Not 7 techniques, not 7 hacks, 7 pearls, 1 presence. If we try to engineer life by metrics, we will reap only more metrics. If, however, we consent to be lived by grace, we shall find what Scripture has always declared. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Let us be plain at the outset, because confusion here costs lives and minds. There are 2 streams that bear the name of healing in modern history, and unless we discern them, we will mix waters and wonder why they are brackish. Long before you and I, Mr. Mesmer explored magnetism and hypnotism, and Mr. Quimby refined suggestion, fine men, earnest men, but their current worked within law, cause and effect, one belief correcting another. Later, the New Thought movements and Unity inherited much of that psychology and wore it with religious trim, teaching that right thinking gets right results, that you can plan your way to paradise by polishing thoughts. I do not disparage sincerity, but I must bear witness. Right thinking is not the infinite way. Mind isn't power. Spirit is power. Soul is power. Consciousness is power. Truth is power. You do not move God by thought. You do not steer grace with affirmations. The law came by Moses. Grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. You do not substitute one law for another. You come out from under law, and you rest in grace. Now, in this age, some of you read these words on a screen with 12 tabs winking at you, and others hear my voice riding a wire or a wave through a little plastic bud in the ear. It would be easy to think the device is a distraction, and often it is. But I tell you a secret we have proven in our work. Hearing carries more than syllables. Authentic spiritual instruction rides on consciousness, and the ear, humbled and attentive, is a doorway. Reading alone will give you content. Hearing, when joined to reading, transmits contact. This is why the old prophets cried, "Hear, O Israel," and why the Master said, "My sheep hear my voice." Not information, but impartation. Not content, but contact. If you will sit with the words until thought slows, and then let the hearing work through the heart, you will discover an atmosphere forming an inner room where presence is tangible. In such an atmosphere, we are not a crowd of individuals. We are a class, a household, gathered into the same awareness. There, the work is done. And so we meet as students, not as managers of outcomes. This is our posture. If you came to collect methods to improve your bargaining power with the universe, you will be disappointed and, I hope, relieved. You will no more be guilty of trying to demonstrate supply than you would be of stealing it. We are not here to secure parking spaces or to visualize promotions. That is still law, still self-preservation, still the ego arranging furniture in a burning house. We are here to behold the presence that is the house, the furniture, and the breath, the one in whom we live and move and have our being. And out of that beholding, acts may follow, yes, and fruits will appear, but they will not be ours to boast of or to fear losing. Presence realized is fulfillment. I know what you hear all day. Do more, think faster, optimize, hustle. I am asking you to set down the whip and take up the yoke that is easy. But let's be careful. Ease is not laziness. Yielding to grace is not abdication of life. It is the only lawful activity under heaven. Make no mistake, be still and know that I am God is not passivity. It is the strongest act a soul can perform, and it is an act beyond cause and effect. It is not your wrong thinking that is getting you in trouble, and so it will not be your right thinking that gets you out. It is the universal hypnosis of law, the belief in reward and punishment, contagion and scarcity, human justice and tribal fear that has drenched the world mind. We will not treat it as personal. We will not scold you for your thoughts. We will instead expose the whole matrix as not power and stand still to witness grace annul it. Now, about these 7 pearls, I offer them not as a ladder, but as facets of one jewel. Each pearl will be paired with a practice and with scripture, for you must have a way to sit down in the presence, and you must have a word that anchors you beyond mood. But hear me, every practice is only a doorway. The presence walks through. Every scripture is a finger pointing. The living word speaks within. We will speak of hearing as the wire down which consciousness moves. We will speak of retiring the cause and effect habit and ceasing to tinker with secondary causes. We will speak of making all error impersonal, lest we feed it with the blame that starves love. We will speak of the silence beyond thought, where power begins. We will speak of refusing to make mind a power, of seeking presence and letting outcomes adopt their rightful shape. We will speak of love without border, of stepping out of tribe and trend into the household of God. And we will speak of daily availability, little rooms of grace strung like beads on the thread of your day, until even the corridors between them are handled by presence. 7 pearls, 1 presence. Do not worry that you cannot memorize them, or that you will miss a step and the machine will break. There is no machine here. There is only availability. Your part is not to manage effects, but to consent to be lived by the one who said, I am the vine, ye are the branches. You do not make sap, you abide. And if I speak with a note of urgency, it is because the climate of 2026 punishes delay. The longer you run under the lash of metrics, the more you will suspect that God, too, is a manager with a quarterly target. He is not. The Father's pleasure is to give, not to bargain. Grace does not wait for you to add merit. It waits for you to lay down manipulation. If you feel a quiet protest rising, but what shall I do, you are in the right classroom. We will give you things to do, but only those that open the window and get you out of the way. We will ask you to hear, not to harvest. We will ask you to be silent, not vacant. We will ask you to love beyond your circle and to make small altars in the day where God can find you available. Then we will step back and let the presence perform its own mighty works, as it always has. For it is written, not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. So let us begin on this note. We are done pushing the river. We will learn to sit on its bank and feel its life. And then when it moves us, we will step in, not to steer it, but to be carried. 7 pearls, 1 presence. Not grit, but grace. Not management, but manifestation of the infinite and visible. And when, in a little while, we turn to the first pearl, remember, you are not collecting beads. You are consenting to a necklace already around your neck. Touch it and let it shine. Now, the first pearl, hearing the work consciousness rides the wire. I say to you, after many years of this ministry and thousands of hours in rooms like this one, and many more hours sealed away with a little black machine catching the breath between words, that something more than syllables can pass from soul to soul. Reading is good. Keep your books. But when the voice goes out, when a man or a woman speaks from realized presence, the air itself thickens, and those who have ears to hear receive not ideas but atmosphere. So then faith cometh by hearing, Paul wrote, and hearing by the word of God. He did not say faith comes by an outline, or by an index, or by an argument. He said by hearing. not because ears are magic, but because the word is a living presence. And when it takes a throat, when it borrows breath, it brings with it a climate. And in that climate, work is done. Do not mistake me. We are not worshiping vibrations or accent or eloquence. We are not making a god of tone quality. The power is not in decibels or in cadence. Mind isn't power. Spirit is power. Soul is power. Consciousness is power. Truth is power. The voice is an instrument. It is a wire. If you place a dead word on a live wire, nothing happens. If a live word rides a simple wire, even a crackly, inexpensive wire, it reaches you with a tenderness that the polished page rarely can. In these years of our electronic work, I have learned this. The microphone, poorly placed. The tape, full of the room's creaks. Even a pause that stretches longer than your comfort, leave it. Do not iron it. Do not varnish it until only personality shines. The pause is not empty. The pause may be the doorway. If you smooth out the doorway, you may seal it shut. Now, because we are born under the law, our habit is to make hearing another form of law. How many minutes? Which playlist? At what speed? We want to optimize the spirit as if it were a spreadsheet. That is exactly the habit we are laying down. When I ask you to hear, I am not asking you to gather points or ideas for later use. I am asking you to sit down and be addressed by presence. I am asking you to consent to contact. In our work, contact does the work. Content only points. And so, a guardrail, favor unaltered teachings. If you find an old class with awkward phrasing, with a laugh that breaks the solemnity, with silence that seems long enough for you to check your messages, thank God, you are closer to the room in which the presence moved. Let the pauses remain. Let the human oddities remain. We are not trying to capture a personality. We are letting a presence find us. Some of you write and say, but I prefer summaries. They're efficient. Of course they are. So is a photograph of a fire compared with a hearth. You may keep it in your pocket and never be singed. But if you would be warmed, at some hour you must sit before a living flame. In hearing, you are not consuming, you are consenting to be warmed. The words will strike your ear, travel inward, irritate a few thoughts, and then, if you do not rush to explain, a hush will begin to form behind them. That hush is not vacancy. That is where the word does what no sentence can do. Therefore, a practice, plain and definite, suited for 2026, with its interruptions and its blinks. Each day, give 10 minutes to hearing, not skimming, not at double speed, not as a soundtrack while you fold laundry. Sit, if possible, with the simplest device you own. Let the voice be as it is. If there is a bell at the start, let it ring. If there is a cough, let it clear. At the end of those 10 minutes, do not leap up. Do not analyze. Close your eyes and give 3 minutes, only 3, to alert silence. Not a trance, not a nap. Sit as if something holy is moving across the room toward you and you will not miss it. When thinking stops, real power begins. In those 3 minutes, you are not manufacturing a result. You are yielding to grace. If a thought intrudes, what shall I fix? What shall I plan? Smile at it as at a child who still believes all cookies belong to him, and let it pass. Once each week, take a longer sitting, 45 minutes. The proportions hold. A steady stream of hearing, followed by a generous silence. Do not force the clock. If the hearing softens you into quiet earlier, obey the quiet. In that longer room, you may find that after a time, the mere sound of a name of God, or of the Master's words, "My peace I give unto you," is enough to open the inner door. And then the voice falls away, and the work continues without syllables. Do not bring it back. Do not prop it up. This is not performance. This is ministry, and you are its recipient. Now, to anchor hearing to the page so you do not drift into sentiment, after each daily hearing, open a single short passage, no more than a paragraph from scripture or from a trusted text that has fed you before. Read it slowly, once, then close the book and sit exactly where you are for another minute or two, letting the words hang like incense in a still room. The combination opens a door that neither alone will often unlock. Hearing catches the consciousness, the reading gives it form. Spirit and letter meet without strangling each other. Hear, O Israel, called the prophet. And then he gave the text, the Lord our God is one Lord. Hear, and then read, and then be still. It is a rhythm older than our devices and wiser than our appetites. And let me add one more fence to keep you safe. Do not attach your devotion to a personality. If you find the voice familiar and comforting, thank God. But remember that the presence behind it is your teacher. The same presence may speak in a different voice tomorrow, or in none at all. Do not chase charisma. Do not prefer accent. The sheep know the shepherd's voice because of its life, not its style. If you catch yourself thinking, I like him or I don't like her, turn inward and say, Father, reveal thyself. We are not here to like. We are here to live. If you will be faithful in this small ordinance, 10 minutes hearing, 3 minutes silence, 1 longer sitting each week, a short passage read, and then set down, you will notice something that is not a result but a climate. Decisions that yesterday demanded pro and con charts now move from compulsion to clarity. The threads of anxiety that tightened at dawn will not tighten quite as soon. A word, overheard in a meeting or spoken to a child, will carry more weight than you intended because you are no longer speaking alone. You will discover why the apostle could be so bold about hearing. Faith, which is not optimism or bravado, but inner availability to God, begins to appear not as your achievement, but as the fruit of contact. And then, dear ones, it will dawn upon you. The wire is not the wonder. The wonder is that the infinite invisible consents to travel any wire at all, to reach you in a plastic bud and in a quiet room and in a pause that embarrasses your schedule, and to say, be still and know that I am God. If you will hear, you will know. And in the knowing, the first pearl will shine of itself. Now the second pearl, and here I must speak plainly, because this is where most of us, even after good hearing, still try to run 2 operating systems at once. We sit in the climate of presence and then hurry back to a ledger. We were born under the law, not under grace. We were trained from the start to keep accounts. If I do this, I get that. If I fail in this, I forfeit that. And so we learned to polish causes, better resumes, better food plans, better positive thoughts, better networking. The whole world is a spreadsheet in 2026, and even the soul has been given columns. But I tell you, beloved, this ledger is not your life. It is bondage. It is the law, and the law can punish and reward, but it cannot give life. What then is the mischief? Is it that you chose the wrong causes? No. It isn't your wrong thinking that is getting you in trouble. It is thinking as the instrument of power at all. It isn't that you have chosen the wrong ritual. It is the very assumption that ritual manipulates God. It isn't that you are behind on your practices. It is the belief that more practice points will buy you more grace. The law always whispers, adjust this and you will get that. The master does not whisper. He declares. The law was given by Moses. Grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. If you attempt to trade one law for a better one, you are still under law. In our work, you do not improve the machinery. You step out of the factory. You do not tinker with secondary causes. You yield the field to grace. Mind isn't power. Spirit is power. Soul is power. Consciousness is power. Truth is power. Is there a principle to this? Yes. The principle is renunciation of causation as control of effect as bait. We do not perform spiritual math to secure health and income. Healing and supply do not come by adjusting causes. They do not come by better affirmations, by holier images, by cleverer plans. They come as the fruit of yielded ground, as the spontaneous order of grace, when the field is no longer fenced by your anxieties. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. That verse is not a transaction. It is a description of climate. In the kingdom climate, things add themselves. Under law, you chase them and they run. Now, because life on our phones has trained us to expect sliders and toggles for every irritation, we try to make even surrender a toggle. We say, teach me the trick. I will add it to my morning stack. This is not a trick. It is the end of tricks. Still, to help the hands unclench, I give you a little ordinance that, if you are honest with it, will make the operating system shift experiential. 3 breaths. That is all. When you find yourself about to manage an outcome, before you send that strategic email, before you open a chart, before you defend yourself in a meeting, sit back in your chair or stand still where you are and give 3 conscious breaths. On the inhale, without strain, let the soul say, I release cause. On the exhale, with equal gentleness, I release effect. And then, for 1 unhurried minute, say inwardly, not as magic words, but as a relinquishment, only grace operates here. Then be silent. When thinking stops, real power begins. Do not use these breaths to steady your aim at the target. Lay down the bow. You will be tempted to tidy the minute, to fill it with assurances. Resist. The minute is God's. You are not invoking a force. You are standing aside for a presence. The breath is not power. Spirit is power. These 3 breaths are simply an usher leading you to your seat so that the ministry can proceed. If in the minute your schedule shuffles, if you feel an impulse to postpone the email or to phone a person you had crossed off your list, obey. If, on the other hand, nothing happens, no lightning, no vision, be faithful anyway. Grace is climate, not spectacular. This is where 2026 must bow. Stop optimizing your life as a machine. Let grace set the order of your day and accept its rearrangements. You may have stacked your hours, perfectly color-coded and cross-linked, and then the train is late, or the child is sick, or the heart says walk. Under law, you protest the interruption and demand compensation. Under grace, you recognize guidance in what law calls delay. A man's heart deviseth his way, but the Lord directeth his steps. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Do not make a fetish of your plan. Make a sanctuary of your availability. I have watched this again and again in our work. A student releases cause and effect before stepping into a negotiation. Their arguments are not sharpened. Their presence is softened. Something in the room, unfelt by those counting leverage, begins to move. The hard line the other party had vowed to maintain becomes porous, or the student themselves perceives that the negotiation is not theirs to have, and so they leave with emptier hands and freer hearts, and within days the supply appears from an unconnected channel. Under law, we call that coincidence. Under grace, we call that order. Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. Bring this to your body. Under law, you will chase causes: gluten, no gluten, light red at night, blue in the day, protocols stacked like pancakes, and then wonder why the stack falls. I do not deny that under law some causes appear to relieve other causes, but we are not servants of appearances. We stand in grace. Before you choose or refuse, take your 3 breaths. I release cause. I release effect. Only grace operates here. Do not attempt to wrestle a symptom to the mat. Do not congratulate yourself if it seems to obey, or condemn yourself if it lingers. Turn from the ledger to the living presence and wait. In the climate of grace, either the symptom dissolves or you are lifted above fear of it, and either way, law has been annulled. The kingdom does not need your bookkeeping to be solvent. And for supply, let me protect you from the oldest robbery. Never again try to demonstrate money, position, buyers, clicks. You will no more be guilty of trying to demonstrate supply than you would be of stealing it. In grace, supply is the seek presence, and let supply find its rightful, effortless form. If the day sends you into a task that was not on your list, bless it. If it closes a door you had been oiling for months, bless it twice. The Lord of the harvest knows the field. Your part is not acquisition, it is abiding. What will mark this shift? A quiet loss of superstition. You will stop thinking that you can insert a pious token here and force a holy jackpot there. You will notice that the less you manage, the more order appears, not your order, God's. Take no thought for your life, the Master said, not as a counsel to negligence, but as a declaration that under grace, life is carried. It does not mean do nothing, it means stop doing as control. Hear, breathe, yield, and then act as you are moved. So we move from hearing the climate of contact into retiring the engineer in us, not swapping one lever for another, but pulling the plug on the whole panel. The law was given by Moses. Grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. This is not poetry, it is practice. 3 breaths to relinquish causation, 1 minute for grace to take its seat, and then the day as it is, rearranged without apology, directed without our diagrams. Presence realized is fulfillment. In that atmosphere, healing and supply appear as what they have always been, the effortless language of a single living presence, speaking itself as our life. Now, having set the hand from the levers, we must also take the finger off the trigger of blame. This is the 3rd pearl, and it will protect you from the cruelest religion, self-accusation dressed as spirituality. It isn't your wrong thinking that is getting you in trouble. Hear me. Discord is not a private crime for which you must pay penance in guilt thoughts. What confronts you? Fear in the chest at 3 a.m., contagion sweeping a city, scarcity tightening its belt around a family, the law of self-preservation, inflaming rivalries. These are not your inventions. They are the universal mesmerism of law making a bid for authority. If you treat them as personal, you feed them with guilt, and guilt is excellent fertilizer for law. If you treat them as universal claims without power, you starve them, and grace can act without obstruction. Is this only a kindness? No, it is a principle. The Master, looking at a man blind from birth, was asked that old accounting question, who sinned, the man or his parents? And he answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. There is your diagnosis, not condemnation, not a file of causes, traced back 3 generations, neither his nor theirs. This is not a personal ledger to be balanced. This is an arena for the works of God to be made manifest. The moment you hear that, the lash falls from your hand against yourself and against your brother. We were born under the law, not under grace. And so the reflex to pin fault is deep. Under law, every effect must have a culprit. Under grace, every appearance is an occasion for God. Make this turn with me, because it will transfigure your days. When a difficulty stands in your doorway, do not rush to ransack your mind for the thought that caused it. Do not go sleuthing your affirmations for the line break where you let the intruder in. That mental detective work is still law. It imagines that if you could piece together the true crime of your psyche, you would then earn acquittal. In our work, we do not win acquittal, we witness the absence of the court. What, then, is the practice? I give you a mini treatment, clean and decisive, that you may apply at the very instant of appearance. When a problem presents itself on a screen, in a body, at your door, pause for a single breath and recognize silently three truths: not personal, not power, not law. Do not explain them to yourself. Do not embroider them with argument. Just stand in that triad. Not personal. This is not your private sin nor your neighbor's. It is the universal claim of fear or contagion or scarcity or self-preservation seeking impersonation as you. Not power, since mind is in power, and fear is in power, and suggestion is in power. Spirit is power. Soul is power. Truth is power. Not law. This has no divine ordinance to support it, no spiritual statute that obliges obedience. It is the world's hypnosis. And hypnosis is not law. Having recognized, be still 2 minutes. Not 1 and not 5. 2. Long enough to let thought tire of circling, short enough that you will consent to do it. In those 2 minutes, do not argue and do not fix. Do not collect reasons. Do not thump scriptures at the sky. Simply abide while the declaration drains the personal charge from the appearance. When thinking stops, real power begins. Those 2 minutes are not passive. They are an antechamber in which the works of God announce themselves as the only authority in the room. You will ask, but what if the fear is loud? Then be more gentle, not more forceful. If it clamors, whisper again inwardly, not personal, not power, not law, and lay your hand upon your own heart if you wish, not as a technique, but as a consent to be comforted. In our work, we do not wrestle fear. We unmask it. Once unmasked, it has as much authority as a dream at breakfast. Now, extend this mercy to the marketplace of screens, where accusation is an industry. In 2026, the algorithms have a taste for shame. They will serve you a diet of failures, scandals, and calibrated outrage, and then ask you to digest them as if they were your own moral calories. Refuse. When a wave of panic or blame surges through your feed, do not inhale it as personal virtue to display. Answer it as a universal claim to be met in silence. Not personal, not power, not law. 2 minutes. If you are being baited to pile on, to forward, to comment with heat, to sharpen the spear of your tribe, take your 2 minutes before you act. Why? Because we are not here to advance the law of self-preservation under a banner of righteousness. We are here to stand still until grace can dissolve the atmosphere that breeds contagion, scarcity, and fear. Judge not that ye be not judged is not a call to moral laziness. It is a refusal to pour gasoline on mesmerism. This does not mean you will never speak. It means that when you speak, it will not be from the blame reflex. The reflex belongs to law. The word that rises from the 2 minutes belongs to grace. And you will find that such words have weight. A quiet message sent in love after the storm. A refusal to share a humiliating clip. A private prayer for the one the crowd is devouring. These are not small. They are acts that deny the world's hypnosis its favorite food. personal guilt projected upon another person. Bring the same to the body of the world. When news of contagion comes knocking with maps and curves and tones of prophetic doom, I do not ask you to deny that under law such things exhibit patterns. I ask you to treat the suggestion as universal mesmerism. You are not a petri dish for fear. You are the temple of the living God, not personal, not power, not law. 2 minutes. In those 2 minutes, hold no one in blame: the traveler, the nurse, the leader, the stranger on the bus. Hold them all inside the declaration. Let the works of God be made manifest, not the works of a tribunal. And in your home, end the blame reflex first where it usually starts, with yourself. If a bill surprises you, if a child stumbles, if a habit resurfaces, catch the tongue before it says, "What's wrong with me?" Nothing is wrong with you in the sense the law means wrong. There may be a universal claim pressing at the edges of your awareness. Handle it as a universal claim, not a personal one. Then take your 2 minutes afterward. If an action is given, make the call, apologize, build the boundary, do it without self-accusation, under grace. Correction is love in motion, not penance paid to a scolding God. I say to you with the authority of many healings witnessed in this way, when you stop personalizing error, the atmosphere clears. The set of condition that mocked your affirmations yesterday will soften, not because you have found the right thought to beat the wrong thought, but because you have withdrawn the only food it had: your guilt and your fear. Mind isn't power. Spirit is power. The realization of the presence of God is fulfillment. In that realization, fear loses its mask, contagion its script, scarcity its stage, and the law of self-preservation its courtroom. The gavel falls in an empty hall, and what remains? The peace of God which passeth all understanding, and a compassion that will not join the mob, because it has seen the man born blind and heard with relief and holy awe, neither this man nor his parents sinned. Now the fourth pearl, and here I will put it so plainly that you cannot mistake me. When thinking stops, power begins. Up to now, we have been turning the face from law to grace, from personal blame to universal claim. But if you ask me, where does the real work occur? I answer, not in your thought, not in your speech, in silence. Be still and know that I am God. That is not embroidery for a wall. That is method. That is how the knowledge, living, operative, healing gets into your bones and your affairs and dissolves the tangles that argument only tightens. Do you imagine I am asking you to switch off the mind by an act of violence? No. We do not club thought into quiet. We arrive method, not magic. The way is simple and definite. Take a single truth, one, not five, not a bouquet. I and the Father are one. Or, my grace is sufficient for thee. Or, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Choose one. For 10 minutes, ponder it, not as a schoolboy recites his lesson to earn a mark, but as a lover traces a familiar line because it is alive. Turn it gently in consciousness. Let it answer your objections without argument. If the thought says, yes, but what about the rent? Smile and return. I and the Father are one. If the thought says, what about the pain? My grace is sufficient for thee. We are not collecting reasons. We are letting the truth rinse the mind of its reflex to manage. In these 10 minutes, you are allowing the theme to do its work on the surface waters. You think not forcefully, not cleverly, until you find that the sentences have begun to thin of themselves. You will notice you are not reaching for the next line. You didn't run out of faith. You ran out of appetite for wording. That is the marker. Do not panic and refill it. Let the vessel empty. When the words ebb, do not chase them. Sit. Here is where the power begins. Now the rest, 15 minutes of wordless resting, not a trance, not a nap, not a conjuring, a simple living stillness. It has qualities. Learn to recognize them. There is often a freshening in the breath, a soft brightness behind the eyes, even when closed, a sense that the room has become delicately alert. No images. Do not paste a light on the wall of your mind or build a throne for God to sit in. No will. Do not push for result. Do not press for a sign. The presence is, the work is taking place where you cannot supervise it. If a thought stirs, shall I plan dinner? Shall I text that person? Shall I check the market, pat it on the head, and let it go out to play? You remain. A hum not of electricity, not of nerves, but of being begins to register. That aliveness is not yours to play with. It is God's to be. Someone will say, but I have always used affirmations. I visualize a clear image until it manifests. Dear one, affirmations and visualizations are mental. They are at best a finger pointing to the moon. If you use them as causes to secure effects, you are still under the law. You are still managing a factory. In our work, we do not adjust the cogs. We leave the building. Mind isn't power. Spirit is power. Soul is power. Truth is power. The power begins where mentation ends, where the last articulate thought yields to the infinite invisible, without a contract, without a demand, without a sketch. In returning and rest shall ye be saved. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. The confidence is not in your technique. It is in God being God. Do not ask me to prove this by a stopwatch miracle, to say, I sat my 15 and the symptom vanished at 12 past the hour. That is the law's bargaining. Presence realized is fulfillment, whether the clock sees it or not. Often, after such a sitting, you will rise and find that an action appears with a cleanliness that was absent before, a call to make, a rest to take, a word to speak that is gentle and carries weight, or without any outward move at all. The pressure that was the true affliction, not the symptom, but the fear, has dissolved, and what remains either clears without drama or is born with a peace that does not argue. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. Stayed, not strained. Set this as an ordinance for your day. 25 minutes, 10 for a single truth, 15 for stillness. If you say, I cannot find 25, you have confessed your God. Something else is your God, and you are worshiping at its calendar. Take it gently, but take it. Morning is best for many, evening for others. Consistency is the teacher, and do not, in the 10 minutes, graze the whole pasture of Scripture. One line is enough if it is living. I and the Father are one. Turn it, look into it, until it looks back. Then let even that go and be. Once a week, do what I have urged through many years. Go apart for 2, 3, even 4 hours. Not to read a stack, not to collect golden sayings in a notebook. Take one text and then take none. Walk if you must, sit if you can, but keep the phone off and the calendar surrendered. You will find that around the second hour, a different quiet arrives, deeper, less fragile. It is like wading from the shallows into a depth that lifts you, your feet still, yet you are born there, unsought. Healings that would not yield to your weekday nibblings occur, not because you conquered them, but because you stood aside long enough for God to be God without your interruptions. That is why the Master went up the mountain alone, not for scenery, for silence. While you are learning, you will be tempted to decorate the silence. A little inner theater here, a guided image there, a mental screensaver of blue light washing a liver or dollars materializing like autumn leaves. No, that is the mind playing with crayons. The mind is not your enemy. It is simply not the power. Let it rest. Bring it a single truth for 10 minutes like warm milk, and then put it to bed while you sit with the living God. If sleep comes, do not be harsh. Wake and return to the stillness. If boredom pecks, notice that it is only hunger for stimulation, not a shortage of God. Stay in this silence. Do not test God by peeking. Do not open one eye every 3rd minute to examine the symptom or the inbox or the face of your neighbor. Be still and know that I am God. The knowing is the fruit of the stillness. The stillness is not a bargain for knowledge. When the knowledge rises, it is not a thought. It is a certainty without argument, a settledness without proof. On that rock, appearances lose their jurisdiction. The court of law adjourns for lack of judge. Grace proceeds. I say to you, after many years of this work, if you will be faithful to this silent method, the landscape of your life will alter, not through the clatter of demonstrations, but through the quiet replacement of climates. Rooms will feel different when you enter because you are not entering alone. The day will move with a choreography you did not arrange. The problem that demanded a council of war will announce its own surrender while you are doing the dishes. And you will smile, not triumphantly, but gratefully, because you will know you did not do it. You yielded. When thinking stops, real power begins. And in that power, the presence itself, the work is done. Now, before we go further with this silence, we must settle an ethical matter that will save you years of detours. Having found the stillness, you will be tempted to use it as a lever. You will be tempted to sit your 10 and 15 and then reach for a result as if the infinite invisible were a compliant power station waiting for your order. No, mind isn't power. Spirit is power. Soul is power. Consciousness is power. Truth is power. Presence is fulfillment. If you attempt to use thought, even nicely laundered spiritual thought, to produce effects, money, health, positions, parking spaces, you have left grace and returned to law. And under law, you will always be keeping books, watching the scales, bartering prayers for outcomes, and wondering why the soul feels thin even when the ledger looks fat. I say to you, after many years of this work, we never tried to demonstrate effects. Not money, not influence, not the body's obeisance. We do not even try to demonstrate a good meditation. We seek the presence, not the prize. We abide, and fulfillment appears of itself in the forms required, when required, as required, without our bargaining and without our timetables. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. That is not a slogan to paste above your vision board. It is a government to live under. Added, not chased. Given, not grabbed. In our way, you would be as guilty of trying to demonstrate supply as you would be of stealing it, because both presume that something outside of God must be acquired by your wits. Why am I so direct? Because outcome manipulation is not merely ineffective, it is unethical. It steals from your own soul. It trains you to regard God as a means and yourself as a manager. It cements you to the cause and effect machinery where every gain purchases a new anxiety. Can I keep it? Can I repeat it? Can I scale it? You manipulate a picture to gain a client, and then must picture more and picture harder to keep the client, and then fear your neighbor's picture will outpicture yours. That is the law of self-preservation dressed for Sunday. Under grace, there is no contest. Under grace, fulfillment is presence appearing as the circumstance of the moment, and no one else must be displaced to make room for you. Let me add a kindly caution, and I add it with a smile because we have all done it. Mental picturing may appear to work, but it often works sideways. You visualize a front row seat and get it, and then spend the night behind a pillar or beneath a vent that coughs all evening. You secure the parking space and an ambulance needs it 2 minutes later. You picture 10,000 clicks and receive them from bots. Do you see? The universe will permit you your toy miracles if you insist on them, but you will pay tuition in unintended consequences. You will learn sooner or later that images never outwit law, they only rearrange it. Grace does not rearrange law. It nullifies it by being the only presence in the room. Therefore, I give you a clean practice, simple and definite, to train your ethics as well as your expectancy. For 30 days, 30 only, you can consent to that. Keep a no demonstration fast. It is a joyful fast. Each time a need presents itself, money, decision, relief in the body, a space on the street, refuse to reach for a method to produce it. Do not picture the envelope. Do not chant for the cure. Do not angle for the opening. Instead, sit down, or if you cannot sit, stand still where you are and take 5 minutes in pure presence without petition. 5. Set a little clock if you must, but do not watch it. No deals, no requests. No bargaining chips of if you will, then I will. Rest in the truth already given. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Or I and the Father are one. Or simply, only grace operates here. If thoughts clatter, let them clatter past like dishes in a neighboring kitchen. When thinking stops, real power begins, even if it stops only in little tides at first. Allow it. At the end of the 5 minutes, do not spring to your feet to see if the need has saluted. Wait one breath more and notice the quality of your inner climate. It will be one of two: a quiet peace with a clean impulse, or no peace with no true direction. If peace and a clean impulse are there, make the call, send the note, rest the body, take the walk, do that and nothing else. If there is no peace, do nothing engineered. You are not being lazy. You are refusing to steal your own day by grasping at effects. 5 minutes again later, if the need still trots around you, presence will make the corridor move to meet you. You do not need to kick down the doors. You will protest. But what if the rent is due? What if the child is crying? Beloved, the rent and the child do not need a frantic manager. They need you present to God. Under law, we confuse speed with care. Under grace, we discover that a single act rising from presence calm, timely, unforced, carries more potency than a spasm of 20 anxious maneuvers. Take no thought for your life, the Master counsels, not that you should neglect life, but that you should not be its accountant. Let the 5-minute rule become the little gate you pass through before any move. You will find that half your moves were never yours to make. During these 30 days, extend the fast to the cute corners where we like to cheat. No demonstrating ideal numbers on a screen, no coaxing a particular person to text, no angling for applause disguised as service. Serve, yes. Love, yes. But demonstrate, no. You do not demonstrate fruit. You consent to be a tree in good soil, and the season demonstrates itself. There will be days when a form appears unasked and perfectly placed, and you will know not smugly, not with private high-five, but with reverent relief that all these things truly are added in a government not your own. And there will be days when the form tarries, and yet the fear that made the form urgent dissolves, and you discover that this too is fulfillment, the cancellation of bondage before the calendar changes. Keep no score beyond this. Was I faithful to the 5 minutes? Did I move only on peace? If you keep that score, you will end the month with a conscience washed of sorcery and a life sensitized to the currents of God. You will have trained the reflex that will serve you when the stakes are louder. First presence, then whatever flows. And sometimes nothing flows but peace, and that is enough. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Give up the trinkets. Receive the kingdom. Seek presence, not outcomes. And in presence, outcomes find their rightful, effortless form. Presence realized is fulfillment. And fulfillment, once you have tasted it, will cure you of ever trying to demonstrate another parking space. Now we must say what perhaps you have known but not yet granted. Silence that ends in you is not our way. Presence realized must widen until it knows no border, or else you will sit 25 minutes and then return to the old fences, the safe tribe, the pet opinion, the algorithm that keeps your blood warm by serving you your own reflection. In 2026, the world will pay you in clicks for outrage and in applause for clever scorn. Under the law of self-preservation, tribes are fortresses and trends are armor. But we were not raised up to defend the fort. We were raised to step into the household of God, where there is neither Jew nor Greek, bond nor free, male nor female, for ye are all one in Christ Jesus. When that becomes identity and not embroidery, competition dissolves of itself. You will never again know the word competition. Do not misunderstand me. I am not asking you for nicer manners. I am saying that universal love is a spiritual principle that disarms the very law that breeds fear and lack. The law of self-preservation says, get yours, guard yours, defend yours, improve your position at somebody else's expense. Grace says, I and the Father are one, and therefore I and you are one, and what touches you touches me, and there is no expense. Love is not sentiment. Love is not a warm mood. Love is the atmosphere in which God alone is cause, and therefore supply appears as fulfillment without theft, without contest, without a loser to pity. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear. When fear goes, lack loses its mouth to feed from. Now, the algorithm has learned our appetites. It does not care what you love. It cares that you burn. It will feed you thrill and fury and call it community. It will slide a story into your palm and whisper, choose a side quickly, loudly, permanently. That is law. It will say, if you do not strike now, you will be forgotten. That is mesmerism. And then it will sell your heat to the highest bidder and try again tomorrow. We do not meet this with counter-outrage or with a pious delete of all our accounts. We meet it by entering the household of God right where we are, and then letting the atmosphere of love change the climate of our feed, our street, our table. What is the practice that incarnates this, clean and definite? Begin with a daily blessing triad. Once each day, bless a stranger, bless an opponent, and bless yourself, not with chatter, with the same purity we have learned in the silence. For the stranger, someone you see on a sidewalk, a bus, a screen pause, one breath, and let this knowing rise without words if you can. Only grace operates here. If words help, Father, be thyself in this one and be still 2 minutes, not personal, not power, not law. For the opponent, the one whose vote, tone, brand, or behavior pricks, you do the same. Refuse the reflex to lecture inwardly. Refuse to rehearse their faults. Hold them 2 minutes in the truth that the works of God are to be made manifest, and that you will not supply the atmosphere of blame in which law thrives. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. There is your lineage. Now for yourself, and I know this is the sharp edge for many, bless yourself. not as flattery, not as a pep talk, but as consent. It is the Father's good pleasure to give me the kingdom. Let that line settle, and rest 2 minutes without bargaining for a specific gift. You are not permitting indulgence. You are allowing identity. If you cannot include yourself in love, you will keep a secret tax on every gift that comes to you and every gift you give. That is still law, keeping the books. In the household, there are no books. There is bread enough and to spare. Once each week, add a different exercise that will feel like a small dying and therefore like a resurrection. Practice a non-competitive generosity, silent and receiptless. Choose one. Send a client to a colleague who can serve better today. Introduce 2 people whose union will not benefit your metrics. Step back so another voice takes the credit you could have claimed. Pay an invoice early and do not mention it. Leave an envelope where it will meet a need, and do not hover to witness the gratitude. Do not post it. Do not even diary it for later halo polishing. Do it, and then go apart 2 minutes and refuse to engineer the harvest. If a glow rises, thank God and let it go. If a twinge of "but what about me" pecks, meet it as the universal claim of self-preservation and take your 2 minutes. When thinking stops, real power begins. Love will have done what no strategy could. It will have moved you from the booking office of law into the open country of grace. You will ask, but will I not be taken advantage of? Under law, yes. Under grace, no. Under law, generosity is a tactic and must be defended by shrewdness. Under grace, generosity is the way the presence breathes through you, and it plants itself where harvest belongs, not where your cleverness predicts. If you find yourself watching the field to see what sprouts, you have left love and entered agriculture under law. Return. Presence is fulfillment. The added forms will come as they come, and more often they will come in ways your tribe could not have arranged. Reconciliations you did not negotiate. Introductions you never sought. Strength in the body, not because you battled it into shape, but because the climate in which the body lives has warmed with love. By their fruits ye shall know them. And the fruit here is simple. As love widens, fear narrows. As fear narrows, supply flows in forms you did not arrange. Rise, then, above nation, color, creed, party, brand. You are not abandoning your heritage. You are inhabiting your source. You will still vote, still serve, still speak, but you will do so as a member of the household, not as a soldier of a camp. In that household, there is room for your neighbor's breath and yours. There is room for error to be met without scorn and for difference to be held without panic. And in that room, competition becomes a curious museum piece, a relic of law's anxiety. I say to you, out of many years, if you will be faithful to this blessing triad and to one weekly act without receipt, something subterranean shifts. The algorithm loses its hold not because you outsmarted it, but because it can no longer bait what is not in you. The day tastes different. The pressure of self-advancement subsides. And where there was tightness in the chest, there is air. Mind isn't power. Spirit is power. Soul is power. Truth is power. Love, universal and without border, is the climate of that power. Enter it, and you find that you are not merely a better person in a bad world, you are a citizen of a different government operating in this world. The law that breeds fear and lack cannot breathe there. The presence breathes, and you breathe with it. And all these things, connection, sufficiency, right place, right time, are added, not because you impressed a system, but because grace recognized itself and could not do otherwise. Now let us take this out of the chair and into the street. It is a fine thing to speak of mountains and households and the atmosphere of love, But 2026 will call your name not on a mountaintop, but in a hallway, at a red light, in the hum of a feed, and in the little box on your desk that keeps lighting up as if it were a god. It isn't more cleverness that you need for this. It isn't more grit. It is a rule, simple and definite, that creates small, sincere rooms for grace all day, and trust the presence to handle the corridors between them. Pray without ceasing. That is not an impossible assignment. It is a rhythm, little altars set along the way so that the presence, not you, governs the path between. Begin here. Micro openings. 60 seconds is not a scrap. 60 seconds entered wholly is an altar. At the red light, do not curse the wait or smuggle a scroll through the intersection. Let the car become a chapel, one breath in which you consent. Only grace operates here. Hands easy on the wheel. Eyes soft. No asking. No fixing. Presence is 60 seconds. In the elevator, do not audition yourself in the steel mirror. Do not pre-fight the meeting. Let the rising box be a little cloud. I and the Father are one. 1 minute without project, without policy. Restroom stillness, yes, even there. Close the stall not only for privacy but for holy pause. 1 minute, no content, contact. These are not sentimentalities. They are demolitions of the law's hypnosis that says everything depends on you, on your speed, on your rehearsed reaction. 1 minute of consent breaks an hour of compulsion. Now, the daily rule, I give you 3 movements that will carry you in 2026, if you will be carried. Hearing, reading, and 3 minutes of rest. Do not make a feast. Make a slice, clean and nourishing. Put on a few minutes of authentic hearing voice that bears consciousness, not merely information. Let it be a class, a scripture, read aloud with quiet authority, a recording that has proven itself in your own experience. Do not sample. Choose and hear for 5 minutes as if you were in the room, because consciousness rides the wire and meets you where you consent to be found. Then take a page, just 1 page, or even 1 paragraph from scripture or from a text that has carried grace for you. Read slowly, not to collect sayings, to let one saying collect you, and then sit 3 minutes with no words at all. 3, a little island of no-doing before the day's tide begins to tug. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Let the acknowledgement be this: hearing, reading, resting, 8 to 10 minutes. If you say you do not have them, then you have said what your God is, and it is not God. Midday, 5 minutes of stillness. Not over lunch, with your mouth full and your feet open. 5 minutes apart. Close the door of your office if you have one. Sit in your parked car if you must. Walk to the end of the block and face a tree. 5 minutes. No petition. No bargain. If thoughts are loud, let them be loud elsewhere. If images want to do a puppet show, lower the curtain. Let what we have called the living silence find you. Do not test it by peeking at your inbox like a child lifting one eye in church. Sit. When thinking stops, real power begins. Even in the middle of a Tuesday, in trousers that do not feel mystical, power begins. Evening. Gratitude in silence. Not a ledger. Not a competitive list of wins. Sit or stand in the quiet and let the day show you where grace handled the corridors you did not manage. A gentleness that arrived in your tongue at noon. A timing that spared you a tangle. A restraint you did not engineer. Do not clutch them. Nod and be still. If a sorrow rises, do not push it aside as unspiritual. Hold it in presence without a fix, and the sting will recede into the larger climate. 2 or 3 minutes will do if they are whole. If you have more, take more. Close the day, not under law, counting, but under grace, consenting. Between these pillars, set 1 more stone. That will change your traffic, the pre-encounter pause. Before you send, speak, post, pitch, or walk into any room where two or more are gathered, including you and your screen, give 1 minute to surrender. Only grace operates here. That is not a line to dress your anxiety in Sunday clothes. It is a handing over of jurisdiction. You are not the cause. You are not the antagonist. You are not the impresario. You are the availability of God. In that minute, do not rehearse your points. Let them be given when they are given. You can be certain of one thing. What you do not say in that piece was not yours to say, and what you do say will have an authority that surprises even you because it did not come from you. You worry. But will this be enough in a world that sprints at me all day? Listen carefully. It is not your sprint that saves you. It is your surrender. Under law, you try to match the speed of the problem. Under grace, you set altars that change the air. Pray without ceasing is not an instruction to keep chattering. It is permission to let your day be stitched with presence so that the cloth holds even when tugged. Micro openings, morning hearing and reading with 3 minutes of rest, midday 5 minutes of stillness, evening gratitude in silence, and a pre-encounter 1 minute surrender. This is ceaseless prayer that fits between the notifications without becoming one more notification. Now, about measurements. In 2026, you will be offered metrics for everything. Steps, clicks, opens, conversions, even the effectiveness of your mindfulness. Under law, you will confuse numbers with nourishment and dashboards with dominion. Do not. Measure by fruit, not metrics. What fruit? Peace, clarity, gentleness. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith. If after your morning rule, you are kinder to the one who brings your coffee, not performatively, but instinctively, that is fruit. If after your midday 5 minutes you do not send the sharp email you had sharpened, that is fruit. If in the evening you can see the day without accusation or self-congratulation, that is fruit. Let the numbers follow or fall away. You may be given more numbers than you can count. You may be stripped of them like autumn leaves. Either way, presence realized is fulfillment. And fulfillment is not an algorithmic outcome. It is God being God where you are. You will fail at this some days. Good. Let even that become a room for grace. Do not make a law out of these rules and then flog yourself with them. Under law, you miss a practice and write yourself a citation. Under grace, you miss a practice and return at the next minute available. No explanation, no penance, no new vows scribbled on a napkin. Return. 1 minute at a red light, 3 minutes after a door closes, 5 minutes at noon. The presence does not sulk. The presence is, I say to you, after many years of this work, if you will build these small rooms, you will find that the corridors between them begin to feel attended, guided, even choreographed. You will turn a corner and the person you needed will be there without an appointment. You will speak less and be heard more. You will spend less force and see more movement. The day will not become an exhibit of your skill. It will be a page on which grace writes without your pencil. Commit thy way unto the Lord. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. Not you, he. Make the rooms. Keep them sincere and small. Let the presence handle the halls. In that unboastful way, pray without ceasing, will become not a strain but a climate, and your life noisier than you like, full of notifications that used to govern you, will begin to breathe with a quieter government that cannot be pinged, cannot be quantified, and cannot be disturbed. Beloved, gather these pearls in your hand and see that there is but one string holding them. It is not grit, it is not cleverness, it is not the righteousness of a well-oiled schedule. It is the one living presence that performs the work. Believest thou not that I am in the Father, and the Father in me? The Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. If presence is doing the works, you and I are not mechanics of outcomes. We are availability to grace. All that we have said, all that we have practiced, has but one aim: to remove the furniture of law from the room, so that grace may sit down and be at home where you are. Now let me hold each pearl to the light for a moment, not to repeat ourselves, but to let the one thread shine through. Hearing the work, was that about information? No, it was about contact. Consciousness rides the wire. In 2026, when words are a flood, you do not need more syllables. You need to consent to be touched by the life behind the words. From law to grace, did we adjust causes? No. We yielded the entire field. The law came by Moses. Grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. We were born under the law. We need not retire under it. We lay down the scales and come under a government in which cause is one and its effects are spontaneous. Universal, not personal. Did we diagnose your faults? No. It isn't your wrong thinking that is getting you in trouble. We turn from blame to the impersonal claim that shows up as fear, contagion, self-preservation, comparison. When you stop feeding error with guilt, grace finds no obstruction. When thinking stops, what then? Real power begins. Not the power of fatigue or trance, but the aliveness that slips in when your mentation has run out of tricks and sits down. Mind isn't power. Spirit is power. Soul is power. Truth is power. Presence is fulfillment. Therefore, we do not demonstrate things. We consent to presence and let things be added. Love without border, was that charity? No, it was identity. The household of God is not a mood. It is the end of competition and the climate of sufficiency. And grace in the street. Did we invent another app for peace? No. We set little altars and trusted the corridors to God. Micro openings, morning hearing and reading with 3 minutes of rest, the midday 5, the evening quiet gratitude, the pre-encounter surrender, all of it weaving a ceaseless acknowledgement that changes the air. There is one thread through the pearls. It is the Father who does the works. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom, not your burden to pry it open. If this is merely said and not lived, it will become another slogan pinned to the corkboard of law. So I commission you now to a clean experiment, definite and brief enough that you will not postpone it to some nobler month, 30 days. Not to impress God, not to earn a badge, to give grace room. For 30 days, keep the rule we have given. Morning, hearing, and reading with 3 minutes of rest, a 5-minute midday stillness, an evening gratitude without bookkeeping, micro openings at red lights, elevators, thresholds, a 1-minute pre-encounter surrender, and the no demonstration fast whenever a need presents itself. Add the blessing triad once each day: a stranger, an opponent, yourself, and once each week, one act of non-competitive generosity without receipt. And now, add one more instrument to your kit, a Grace Notes journal. This journal is not a trophy case. It is not a ledger of loot. It is not a place to tally dollars, followers, or square footage. It is a listening post where you jot only what belongs to grace: inner shifts, surprising eases, unforced abstentions from folly, timings that spared you, reconciliations that arrived without campaign, a peace that settled without a why. 2 or 3 lines suffice. At noon, the impulse to correct her softened. I waited, and the meeting breathed. Train delay. Sat 1 minute, seat beside me open to a conversation I did not arrange. Pain rose. I refused the bargain. 5 minutes later, fear was absent, though the sensation still hummed. I slept. You see, this is not scorekeeping of things. It is the record of a climate. It trains your eye to the presence, not the prizes. If you are tempted to brag to yourself, close the book and whisper, "It is the Father who doeth the works," and leave it there. Now listen carefully, because this belongs to the ethics of our way. In these 30 days, protect the atmosphere for the children and the vulnerable. Grace never harms. If any word you speak of God frightens a child, do not speak it that way again. If any practice you do leaves the weaker one blamed for their burden, lay that practice down and take up the impersonal treatment. In your home, in your office, on your street, be the one who refuses to pass along the curse of cause and effect accusation. Suffer the little children to come unto me, and forbid them not. The climate of grace is permission, shelter, and unearned welcome. If a teaching, no matter how elegantly packaged, turns love into a tool or makes you the manager of others' destinies, turn from it and drink at the sources that have delivered you to peace. Read and hear from those who carry the hush of God, whose fruit is gentleness, whose law is none. Authentic teachings do not make you a sorcerer, they return you to sonship. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Some of you will say, "But I am tired. Can I do this?" Not by might, not by power, not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. This is not a stamina test. It is an availability test. Each altar is small enough for the weary to reach. Each minute is short enough for the busy to spare. Each fast from demonstration is sweet enough for the anxious to dare. And when you find yourself failing, and you will some days use even that as proof that law has no hold, return at the next minute available. No confession, no vows, no punishments, return. The presence does not sulk. The presence is, I say to you, after my years in this work and after more failures than you would guess and more healings than I could ever take credit for, if you will consent to this 30-day field practice, you will discover that you have moved houses, not physically perhaps, but governmentally. You will watch as the reflex to manage outcomes loosens its fist. You will find yourself withholding a word that would have won you a round and losing nothing by the loss. You will discover that money arrives not as a trophy of anxiety, but as a servant to a grace-born impulse. You will see, now and then, the small miracle of the street, the child who smiles at you in the crosswalk because something in you was not hurrying him across, the email that writes itself in a sentence instead of a campaign, the body that rests because the atmosphere in which it lives has changed. Presence realized is fulfillment. Fulfillment appears as what is needed, when needed, how needed, without your bargains. And then, do you see the simplicity? Your year is no longer a project. Your 2026 is not a hill you must push up with your shoulders. Your year is a page on which grace writes without your pencil. Your part is availability. The part you do not take is management. It is the Father who does the works. Anchor there. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Trust there. In that double anchoring, law loses jurisdiction, and grace, which has been waiting at your door all along, walks in and begins to be God where you are. So I send you out now, not as missionaries of effort, but as witnesses of presence. Refuse grit as your God. Choose grace as your government. Keep the rule. Keep it simple. Keep it kind. Write your grace notes like a lover who cannot help noticing. Drink from authentic springs. Shelter the little ones, the literal and the figurative. Treat error impersonally. Fall silent until the tingling life arrives. Seek not outcomes. Seek God. And when he is found, let everything else be added or taken away without your panic. This is our commission. Let the presence live your 2026. Be the open door. Be the quiet room. Be the yes that does not strive. And you will find that the work is done where you are, not by you, but in you and through you for those who have forgotten that the kingdom was already theirs.